Hi, everyone. This is Jason Burak of Wall Street for Main Street. We have a special Wall Street for Main Street podcast today on the uranium market and nuclear energy based on the news out of Japan. Today's special guest is Aaron Basile. He's a good blogger. He's a fusion guy, which means he combines technical and fundamental analysis for those of you who are not familiar with his work. Hi, Aaron.
How you doing, Jason?
Very good. My uranium stocks are not doing very good, but I am doing very good. So, Aaron, on to today's topic. We see, all the stuff on the mainstream media news here, that we're going to have, a Chernobyl or worse than a Chernobyl because now there's hydrogen explosions, inside these stuff. Is there a lot of misinformation out there in the mainstream media? Do you think there's a lot of fear mongering going on?
Yeah, well, there definitely is, but of course there's some validity to it. I mean, we're talking about a lot of people that got killed here. But at the same time, nuclear power had to deal with a bad rep for years and years, mostly because it's associated with the atom bomb, and so people are automatically hesitant to accept it as a form of energy. But yeah, if there is going to be a lot of selling, I had to admit I didn't expect the kind of selling that we saw today. But it appears that we're going to be set back a few years, not just with the nuclear market, but a lot of alternative energy markets are going to feel this too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Aaron. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how all the alternatives are going to play out. I mean, there could be a lot more, subsidies thrown at wind and solar, and maybe some of the other, tidal, some of the other things that are kind of off there on the periphery. But nuclear power is very important already in the global picture. It was already producing, I believe, 30% of all Japan's, electricity needs. And unfortunately, Japan had the older versions of the nuclear power plants. They had these first generation ones, and while they're built, safely, the average life for these plants is only supposed to be 30 years, and you have these, 50-year-old plants. These things are supposed to have been replaced with the second and third generation plants, the new ones now that China's building that are, more efficient, safer, the types of plants that are like the plutonium breeder reactor, which doesn't even require that much water at all, and some of the
Yep.
other stuff.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that a country like Japan would want to pass up the opportunity to, make safer power plants simply because, they're quite cheap right now because they have to deal with their debt situation. So they're trying to get away with a lot. But I mean, you're right that these plants, they're very old. They weren't supposed to be used past, 30 or 35 years. And of course, that's going to get left out of the headline news. They're going to talk about how dangerous these plants are. And, they really ruin it for the guys that have been researching and developing, to make these plants safer. And, I think the general public just doesn't understand that, the newer plants, like as you said, they don't really, some of them don't even need water to run on, and they're much safer. But, the mainstream media is going to play that down, and, we could see a big setback here in nuclear power.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a repeat, of Chernobyl, of the type of scare tactics that the mainstream media, used over Chernobyl. And, Chernobyl was, all these corners were cut by the Soviets. I mean, they didn't do the normal procedures for building the nuclear power plants, the safe way. They cut corner after corner after corner after corner. You can even see that, the way the Japanese designed these nuclear plants, even the first generation ones, they didn't cut corners because the plants are, sturdy and they're holding up, and it looks like the contamination leaks pretty well safe. I don't think the core melted through all of the concrete.
No, those engineers actually did a really good job, and for that plant being a first generation plant and not having the containment walls breached, it really says something about the safety of the plants, especially when everything is executed the way it's supposed to be done. And going back to the safety issue, if this were oil, like we saw last year with the BP issue, we had half the environment in the Gulf was destroyed, just thousands of plants, animals, a lot of fishermen lost their jobs. But oil has been around for hundreds of years, not just in fuel, but other applications as well. And you don't see the type of fear mongering you do with oil as you do nuclear energy. And I think that's because nuclear energy is associated with the atom bomb.
It's very true. And then, the mainstream media also has Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, and then there's that Jane Fonda movie, The China Syndrome. I think
Yeah.
most Americans don't understand, nuclear power, nuclear energy. Like you said, I mean, I don't have a degree in nuclear physics or anything, but I've been researching, this market for over a year, and I have an investment money. I have money in my portfolio, invested in Denison. DNN took about a 25% haircut today in one day. I don't know what it closed at today. I am not looking at a chart of it right now. I'm looking at Cameco's chart. Cameco actually rebounded pretty nicely. But do you think there's still value here long term? Or do you think the market could go quite a bit lower, as fear continues to overwhelm greed and Wall Street's, short-sightedness and the programmed, shorting from the hedge funds and the institutions and the investment banks just continues to overwhelm the price for a little?
Well, I think we will see some selling, continue on, even though we did. I mean, I'm looking at some charts here. Uh, some of these ETFs are down over 20%. Some of the producers are down 20% or more. And there's definitely, uh, you don't have them sell off 20% in one day and expect it to just rebound, especially some of these smaller producers. I mean, Cameco might be able to get away with that because they've been around for a while and they're, considered a safer play. But I do see a lot of value here. I think that if you're a long-term investor and you understand the fundamentals, you can add maybe half of a position here and then wait for it to find the bottom if it continues to sell off, and then add another half. And I still see a lot of value here. I mean, this plant that exploded, it was a first generation plant. The ones that we have now are a lot safer. I think that if there are regulations put on uranium and uranium mining, then it's only going to be more bullish for the price, because you have to factor in the supply that's going to be cut off by that regulation and the growing demand. I mean, China wants to add another 40 nuclear reactors within the next 10, 15 years. I mean, the supply and the demand fundamentals are just on the side of uranium right now, especially today with the valuation. I mean, Cameco a couple of weeks ago, their price to book was about 4, and just after today, it's about 2.9. So, I mean, that's just a great valuation, if you ask me.
Yeah, and with Cameco, you're also getting over 200 million pounds of uranium, of high quality, high grade uranium. They have two of the highest grade uranium deposits in the world in Cigar Lake and MacArthur River. You're getting those at a tremendous discount to the market price. In terms of talking some other fundamentals, you actually started to talk about the next thing I was going to ask you about, because I wanted to discuss, some of the longer term fundamentals of the uranium market and nuclear power. We have 7 billion people on this planet now, and I think like total nuclear power generated for all the electricity on this planet, like worldwide, it varies in country to country. Like, France and Germany and Japan have more nuclear power generated electricity than other countries in the U.S., but I think the total number is about 10% worldwide of total nuclear power. And I know, Obama came out in the last year and said that the goal was to get our nuclear power electricity generation up to 30% in the next 15, 20 years. So I still think the fundamentals are turning bullish. I don't see any other way, Aaron, that we're going to be able to generate that type of electricity, for that many people in all these developing countries. I just don't see any other way without nuclear power being an even bigger picture, part of that, part of the answer than it is today.
Right. I mean, there's other forms of energy, like coal, for example, but I think that's a dying market, with the way that the EPA is and everything now. You have natural gas. I think that'll be tapped pretty soon, especially with this incident, because Obama's going to be looking for relief to not only oil prices, but now we need an alternative to nuclear if that's going to be the case, and nuclear is going to be stalled for a while. So I think natural gas could be a good play here. But getting back to uranium and nuclear energy, I mean, yeah, just like you said, France is close to 80% of its electricity is nuclear powered. Um, Sweden about 50%, and it's only going to get bigger as the oil price gets up to 145, 175, even $200 a barrel with the obsession from these central bankers to print trillions of dollars of money, just like the Japan central bank did over the weekend to relieve the sell-off that they had this morning.
Those are some good points, Aaron. You also brought up a couple of minutes ago, the two-pronged or three-pronged approach. As a long-term investor, someone who's not really a trader necessarily, but someone who's thinking, out a year, 2 years, 3 years, or longer, averaging down. Buying your position in halves. I'll buy a third of my position now on the stip here. And if things drop another 15, 20, 30%, whatever, I'm going to buy more because I trust my research. I've done my homework, and the second and third generation nuclear power plants won't have the same issues that these first generations ones would. They wouldn't be right next to the ocean there waiting for a tsunami. They'll be probably safer and more inland. I'm looking at the price for spot uranium today, and it's not really even down that much. So the price for spot uranium is still $66.50 a pound in the spot market. You'd think that that would have crashed too.
Right, and it's interesting because you and I are gold and silver guys, and we talk about all the time how the producers typically lag, and it seems like the same thing is going on here. I mean, I'm looking at, and even the ETFs for uranium are lagging. The Global X Uranium ETF (URA), it's actually a relatively new one, just made an all-time low. It closed around 1573. So, we'll just have to see how this plays out. I mean, this could be a knee jerk for the producers. Maybe within a month they'll rebound to more, to more regular levels. I don't think that they're going to rebound fully, but, we'll see what happens. It's interesting, though, that spot price didn't get hit, as hard.
Exactly, Aaron, which means I think that the people, who are longer term investors in this market, mainly like the Chinese and smart, astute commodity investors like ourselves, I think we're going to be all buying here in the dips. I know that's what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on, adding to my Denison position soon, and also, looking at some of those more attractive other juniors like, a Hathor, a Strathmore, a Uraners, Uranium Energy Corporation, UEC, and some of the other juniors that are in the Athabasca Basin there in Canada, drilling that super high-grade uranium.
Yeah, I mean, those miners in Canada have a lot higher advantage, at least from a safety point. It looks like a lot of these junior producers are at some critical support levels, or at least they found support. I'm looking at Denison right now, and they're trading about right where they were during November. But still, a 20% in one day, you got to know that there's going to be continued pressure on this market. And, that's partly why I recommend only opening half of the position that you would, because, as a contrarian, you have to know that, Wall Street is going to still continue to be bearish, and you're planning on being ahead of the trade, but you also don't want to you don't want to lose too much money on your positions by just going all in. That's just way too much risk.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely plan on adding to my Denison position. I've studied the company, pretty well. They have already good amount of production. They're going to be growing reserves a lot with the Wheeler River find, and they're probably going to be helping consolidate the sector. I think they'll end up, challenging Cameco in the future. If I was Cameco here, Aaron, and things did get a little worse, I would debate spending some of my cash and going and buying maybe a Denison or a Hathor, just adding to my reserves.
Yeah, I'm looking at the valuations now for Denison, and they've dropped significantly. I mean, their price to book is now at a 1.6 multiple. And I mean, these juniors are looking pretty attractive right now. Even some of the high cost juniors, like a Pele Mountain, they're pretty high cost, but even at this price, it's still very attractive.
Well, the valuation metrics I use for Denison, I value their reserves, their P2 reserves, proven and probable. And Denison has about 42 million pounds of proven and probable uranium reserves. So being able to buy those when the stock is around, two something today, and you value, you plug in the numbers of those reserves, how much are those reserves worth at, $70 a pound uranium, you're buying the stock at just an incredible discount.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, another sector that we haven't discussed yet, though, is the rare earth sector, and how that's going to be affected by this. I wonder if, I mean, I know Great Western was in talks, or excuse me, Ucore Rare Earths was in talks with some people in government a few weeks ago, and they might get a grant soon. And I wonder if that, the situation in Japan might just speed up that process.
It's a good point, Aaron. Also, to continue on that, this might help thorium because, thorium wouldn't have the same problems. Not going to have to worry about a humongous amount of radioactive thing. If thorium, in fact, eats up the used plutonium and uranium created in the new nuclear reactors and also the old versions, this might, accelerate the conversion of some of these nuclear power plants that we want to build in the future to thorium. Because I think thorium works, and you know who's got thorium?
Right. And a big reason, why thorium didn't take off like it did is because of the French, way back, I believe it was in the 70s, wanted to push uranium. And, thorium is just a lot safer, and I think it's just as efficient, if not more efficient, than uranium. And, if the price runs up to 100, 130 again, you could see thorium come back.
That's good, Aaron. Now some interesting ways to play this besides, the pure plays on the uranium miners. Some other ways to play this might be Lightbridge, LTBR, as they design both nuclear power plants, the fuel for uranium ones, and they also do the thorium, the dual reactor. The Lightbridge is working with Areva on some innovative technologies involving like a thorium uranium like dual reactor and also a pure thorium reactor one. And then the other one would be IBC, the advanced alloys. IBC is working
Right.
with beryllium, and they're going to create. They're testing right now at Purdue and Texas A&M, and also one of GE's subsidiaries for nuclear power, too, and Westinghouse are also involved in this. And they're testing like a beryllium uranium core reactor that can take higher temperatures that is less likely to melt down.
Yeah, and the important thing to know about this is that there isn't very much time right now to get into this sector because there will be, I can almost guarantee that there's going to be subsidies for other alternative energy. I think natural gas, like I said before, will be the first one that gets some subsidies, at least from the U.S. But I think thorium and possibly even rare earth oxides would be next in line, and you got to get into this stuff before Wall Street figures out what's going on.
See, I really like natural gas too, but the shale plays, Aaron, that are going on right now, the hydraulic fracturing is just a tremendous problem that people are not talking about. Like, I know the oil and gas companies love it, but if people go watch the documentary Gasland or this really small grassroots documentary called All Fracked Up, they will, which I just watched in the last few weeks, they will see, that shale gas plays, that hydraulic fracturing, it involves a lot of dynamite, and it destroys the water. It puts, cancerous stuff into the water. So, people are talking about possible nuclear fallout, radiation poisoning, but if people are dying from cancer, for us to have natural gas, is natural gas, really that clean too? So my whole point with this is that all energy has problems. There is no, perfect thing of energy. Like even geothermal, solar, wind, like you put solar panels, in the desert, and you're gonna threaten the desert habitat life, the animals there, by digging up all the desert area. So everything's kind of got its plus and minuses and its weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely, and going back to the BP thing, I mean, you can have oil, just completely destroy an environment, but you don't hear people making as big of a deal about it as far as a safety aspect. And going back to natural gas really quick, though I do think the only reason I think that natural gas will get the subsidies first is because that just seems what is on the agenda in Washington right now. But I do agree that thorium would be a much better play as far as an efficiency standpoint. But I mean, you look at corn ethanol and stuff, that the other things that the government has subsidized, that is, just been, in my opinion, a complete failure. Just leads me to believe that efficiency isn't always what's on the outlook for the U.S.
I wish efficiency was. Unfortunately, though, you're right. I mean, a lot of the stuff is just so short-sighted. Where the energy return on energy invested for corn ethanol is just a total joke. We're spending like a barrel of oil to produce not even a barrel of corn ethanol, basically. If people, once the fuel's ready, people don't even get the good gas mileage, and we're wasting a barrel of oil to create the corn ethanol. And then, the food prices are going up because I think now over 30% of the U.S.'s corn production is now going towards corn ethanol. And look at the food prices, Aaron. So this is total nonsense.
Absolutely. And they also, I've heard reports that corn ethanol can destroy engines of tractors and other small vehicles like ATVs. It's been a disaster. It's driven up the price of food. It's driven up the price of gas. And it just proves again that the government does not it should not involve itself in business.
Exactly right, Aaron. Or the government rather should, the Department of Energy or whoever is buying off the Department of Energy, because I've looked at the subsidies. People need to go look at the subsidies that big oil, big coal, and corn ethanol are all getting from the Department of Energy for research and development grants. And it's billions and billions of dollars a year. They are getting over 80% of all the R&D money from the Department of Energy per year still. And that the renewables, the legitimate renewables, like, maybe a thorium reactor or, solar, wind, geothermal, these others are not getting any subsidies. So we're Austrian School of Economics guys. We don't think anyone should be getting a subsidy. And we know that, U.S. consumers don't pay the real price of oil at the pump. So that makes it harder to begin with for the alternatives to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. The government's been in business for years, and prices just continue to go up, and it's just been a disaster.
Okay, Aaron, so wrapping up a little bit, let's summarize some of the points we made here. We think that the supply-demand fundamentals, long-term, for uranium are still not affected by what's happened today. In fact, you could probably make an argument now that there's going to be underinvestment now in, uranium and nuclear power technology, and that the existing stuff is going to go up in value, once we're through this crisis here in Japan that everyone's seeing on the news, that, the uranium price is just going to go up because some of these guys that were thinking of bringing on supply now, there's going to be uncertainty, and they're not going to make the investments and bring on the supply. And we know how long it takes to get a uranium mine approved.
Yeah, that's actually a great point now that you mention it, because the existing plays are going to get a bigger piece of the market as the market gets smaller. And, somebody that was thinking of bringing a uranium plant online, maybe they had a certain amount of capital, and maybe they'll reconsider now because, the governments will pass laws, and regulations on the mining and on the processing, which will, make it no longer profitable for them to, start up a facility, and that will make it, easier for these other companies like Camcos and Denisons that are already around to just eat up whatever is left with the market. And just having the regulations, go forth that are almost certain to happen right now are just going to put constraint on the supply. And when you factor in the demand and the oil prices, well, you've got, a supply constraint, and then you've got the need for the alternative energy. I just see it's too good of a valuation right now. And
higher coal prices too, Aaron, because, like I said, uranium nuclear power is really competing not just with oil, it's competing, with natural gas and with coal. So if people want to, an outside the box play, natural gas should benefit from this. as well. And then, from the technology standpoint in the nuclear power, I think a Lightbridge or a IBC, Advanced Alloys, would be two good companies that people might want to speculate on here. I think Lightbridge is already profitable, but I think IBC is going to have a very bright future based on this. I think, IBC could really help. But in terms of fundamental factors, I think people need to watch to see what China's stance is on all this. They need to see, like, if China comes out and says, our technologies, our second and third generation plants that we're building are going to be safe, a lot safer, than Japan's ones. We're not putting it, anywhere near the coastline or anything like that. I think people need to pay attention to what China's opinion is of this, because the market's being driven mostly by China and the developing countries, and also, like South Korea and India that are adding nuclear power plants, and not really the U.S. at this point. And the other fundamental factor, and I think this is another big one, and you just don't hear a lot of people talk about, especially on CNBC and Bloomberg, but you hear a lot of, energy analysts elsewhere who are not brought on these shows routinely. You hear them talk about is the megatons per megawatts program. So I think by 2013, once all those decommissioned, Soviet-style nuclear bombs are brought offline, and no longer are able, to be downblended. Yeah, you like my voice.
Yeah.
Are no longer able to. I am from Russian descent. Russian Ukrainian are no longer able to be, downblended back into usable nuclear fuel. This is just setting up for another, like, basically Jim Poplava peak oil catastrophe down the line, where not enough production is online there to meet demand.
Exactly. And going along with what you were saying before about China, if they have been building and have come out and said that they want to build more nuclear plants, I don't think that, this situation will change their minds one bit. I think that they're one of the wisest investors, in the world, and they're very proactive. I don't think this will change their mindset at all, and I think people should be following them to see what their opinion is, but I don't think it'll change at all.
It's a good point, Aaron, and I also think China's, committed to thorium on top of this. Not only is China building one coal-fired power plant a week, and they don't want to do it, but they kind of feel forced to. They're still on track to build one nuclear power plant a month, and like they already have 20 plants in construction on top of what I think they have a dozen in use already. They have 20 something in construction. They have another 40 already in advanced planning, and they have another 200 plus planned after that. So, and then that's not even counting thorium. And China is about to, put a good amount of thorium plants into production. So I think people, can hedge with some of these rare earth miners. We didn't talk earlier, we just said that thorium was going to benefit, but we didn't say, that a lot of the rare earth miners have thorium. So for our listeners who are, newbies, rare earth miners, a lot of them also have thorium.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why some of these rare earth plays are just such a good valuation, because you get the benefits of the rare earth oxides or the heavy and light REEs, and you also get the thorium play. So even if thorium is chosen to be used for energy before the rare earths, you still get the play off of that with whatever producer you're using, and you get the rare earths.
It's great, great point, great insights, Aaron. And as I put it, in the Dragon Metals report, since the report's been out in October, one of the things I talked about, I've never heard anyone else discuss this, was that if the uranium price goes to a certain level, or if thorium becomes very viable, and a lot of the nuclear power industry starts switching to it, you're going to see Cameco, you're going to see Denison, you're going to see these guys start to protect themselves. And you're going to go see them go into the market there and just go buy up the rare earths companies with thorium in their deposit, because, it's going to be out of survival. They're going to say they're going to have, thorium deposits and uranium deposits, and say, we'll make either a nuclear power plant, whatever our customers want.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who puts the first foot down, though. What would be very interesting is if within a few months, depending on how the situation escalates and so on, if Cameco does go out and look at a Linus or a Great Western and express interest in them, I think that would be huge for the rare earth sector.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll occur, Aaron, in the next 6 to 12 months, but I think a lot of people now are going to be watching China and seeing, how well China can make the scale of the thorium plants. And if China, puts down 5 thorium plants and, it's rolling smoothly, you're going to see the uranium guys, the uranium miners, start to panic. And you're going to see them just come in with the cash and buy up thorium rare earth assets.
Yeah, and you're already seeing. I think this is going to be even. The situation in Japan is going to be even more of a catalyst for the Japanese. I mean, they're already looking all over the globe for rare earth deposits. And there was reports coming out that they were looking at deposits in South Africa, Mongolia, a lot of places with geopolitical risk. And I think this is just going to hasten that.
Yeah, exactly right, Aaron. And also Vietnam and Brazil too. So Toyota, Sumitomo, Hitachi, they're willing to go all over the globe to find the rare earth supply they need. And if their nuclear power industry in Japan, wants to switch to thorium, then they're going to be, after the rare earths even more.
Yeah, and, there is still a lot of a mainstream bearishness towards the rare earths and towards China's rare earth policy. And, a lot of people are saying that, Hitachi and Toyota are already coming out with magnets that are supposed to be an alternative to the neodymium and so on. But, they really fail to understand the supply issue. You can't just build one of these deposits in under a year. It's not feasible, even with government backing. Even if there is a plan to reduce dependence on REEs in the future, it's still not going to come after rare earths explode in value.
Exactly. What most people don't understand, and astute investors will understand this and profit off of it, is how long it takes to bring a rare earth mine back into production. You look at Molycorp and all the advantages Mountain Pass has, and it's still not going to be into phase 1 until 2012 and phase 2 of its production till 2013. And this is all the stuff was there needed, but like all the environmental permitting process that has to go in now, and the upgrades that Molycorp has to do to fix things. I just don't see the supply being able to keep up with demand. And everyone wants cheap electricity. It's the most of the world, what we here in the United States take for granted, a lot of the people in the world still don't have. Like, they might have a cell phone, but they don't have full electricity at their homes or where they're living yet, or they might have a little bit of electricity. So if everyone's going to be using electricity anywhere close to the level that Americans and some Western Europeans are, I just don't see it happening without a certain amount of coal, a certain amount of natural gas, and of course nuclear power.
Yeah, and the Fed is driving the growth for emerging markets because they don't want to change their monetary policy. And so you've got, 10 to 15% inflation in Brazil and 20% in India. And, these countries are coming online very quickly. And we're not going to last running on just oil and coal and natural gas. We're going to need forms of alternative energy one way or another.
Exactly, Aaron. And I think, as Jim Poplava points out, especially, with peak oil and some of the other, coal production, coal prices have gone up a lot, and yet, the U.S. claims to have a lot of coal, don't know exactly how much, and we have to blow up mountaintops to do it and destroy all the area and water and stuff around it. So this is setting up for a train wreck, I think, Aaron, in 5 to 7 years. This is setting up for an energy train wreck with global population increasing.
A global population increasing and the increasing margin that consumers are spending on food and energy of their as a percent of their budgets. In America, it's still relatively low, but it's rising very quickly. Other countries have already hit the boiling point, like the countries in the Middle East, Egypt and Libya and Tunisia. Pretty soon it's going to be India and, the Chinese. And it's just not going to be it's not going to be very painful, or it's not going to be very fun. It's going to be painful.
Exactly. I definitely plan on continuing to add to my Denison position, to disclose that to people. I added a little bit a couple weeks ago, on a dip, and now we have more of a dip. I really like Denison. They're in production. Um, I think they're the best mid-tier producer. They're geographically diversified. The stock is not pricing in the Wheeler River discovery there in the Athabasca Basin, which is super high grade. Peter Grandich says that Denison has the highest grade uranium discovery ever. It might be one of the largest recorded uranium mining discovery ever, larger than even Cigar Lake or MacArthur River. So they're not done drilling that. Um, if anyone wants to find your work, Aaron, where can they find your blog articles?
They can read my blog articles at aaronbasile.wordpress.com.
And I also want to give you credit, Aaron, and a shout out. You've been providing us with the nice backgrounds on our podcast, the interviews that we've been doing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll provide this one as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron.
All right.